If you are relying on inspiration for your success, you're doing it all wrong. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, and we inspire. And I was moved by an article by a gentleman named Anthony Moore, who had the title, "If You're Relying on Inspiration, You're Doing It Wrong." I wanted to read that article, and I did. I want to share with you. I want to add some points to it and point out how if your foundation is not good, if your premise is not good, you're not going to reach the success that you desire and deserve. So let's get started. Once again, big shout out to Anthony Moore. The formula is action, inspiration, motivation. Action comes first, not last. Get off your butt and do something. Action comes first. Action creates inspiration. Action creates luck, creativity, and motivation. How do I know that? I experienced it. When I was a young puppy, starting out in the wonderful world of commission only, knocking on doors, working for a company called Copa, I'll tell you something, you don't wake up in the morning and say, "Oh boy, I get to knock on doors today." But that was one of the essential ingredients, because if you wanted to have a customer, you wanted to make a sale, you had to have a prospect, you had to be speaking to somebody, you had to have somebody across the kitchen table from you listening to what it was that you were trying to sell. And with Copa, one of the things that they did was they had a special knock that you knocked on the door, and the knock went something like this. And when you did that, then when somebody would open the door, it's showtime. But the first thing is you had to take that action. And because you don't feel like it, I mean, it's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon, 4:30 in the afternoon, it's warm, you're walking up to a door. Do you really want to do that? But you've made a commitment, you're going to make some sales, you want to advance in the company, you want to make money. So you force yourself to do it. And when you walk to that door and you give the special knock, somebody opens the door, all of a sudden it's showtime, you're inspired. And my boss, Bob Anderson, used to always say, the action precedes the feeling. The action precedes the feeling. And if you have writer's block, write. If you feel like you don't know what to paint, then paint. If you don't feel like loving your partner, then go to do the dishes for them and clean the bathroom. All right? Take action. Don't wait until you feel inspired. Action creates motivation. Although motivation can be a result of inspiration, action itself causes inspiration too. It's simply a matter of, as the famous composer Tchaikovsky said, mastering your disinclination. Here's the point. Talent that relies entirely on inspiration will never achieve greatness. The most an inspiration alone strategy can produce is sporadic spurts of decent work. Relying on inspiration is unsustainable, immature, and limiting. Yet this is the framework for how most people live their lives. You're defined by what you're willing to struggle for. That's a quote from Mark Manson. What are you willing to struggle through and see to the end? Well, I can tell you a story about that. I wanted to be a basketball coach. And, I played high school, I played college. And when I say played in college, I'm really using the term loosely, because I was on a Division III team that won maybe 2 or 3 games a year. And I was the guy at the end of the bench, which means I stood up for the national anthem and during timeouts, and then I would sit down again. But, you're getting to the end of the season, and you're going through practices, and you're running sprints and you're doing all the workouts and working really, really hard, and you say to yourself, for what? Why am I doing that? Why am I doing that? It's because I had a love for the game and I had a burning desire that I wanted to be a coach. I was willing to struggle through the practices, and this wasn't just like 1 year. This was 3 years of it when I was in college. The love of the game kept me going. I was willing to pay the price to struggle through and see it till the end. Sure, the individual that relies entirely on bursts of inspiration might occasionally make something decent. But if in between these spurts they lament over their lack of getting something done and cease to do any action until inspiration strikes again, they're not ever going to be successful. Inspiration without action doesn't work. Acting as if becomes acting as is. Very often, the only way to obtain a new quality or trait is to start behaving as if you already have it. The rule for action is simple. Just do the work. It doesn't matter how you feel at the time. Just do it. This is true for every area in which you wish to see success. Your health, your body, relationships, career, projects, finances, behavior, everything. Let me give you an example of that. In between my sophomore and junior year in high school, my burning desire was to become a starter on the varsity. As a sophomore, I was the last person cut from varsity. We had the people returning that had started before, and I said to myself, I'm going to beat out one of those guys. I wasn't even on the team last year. I'm going to beat out one of these guys that was a starter last year. So how did I do it? I said to myself, you know, if you're a player, if you're a starter, how would you act? What would you do? And I created a training regimen. I lived, on a street, and there were some really huge, steep hills, Corey Road, Brainerd Road, near where I lived. The hills were just massive. So part of my regimen, part of my training was every day I would jog. And you got to understand something. When you wake up in the morning, the first thing you say to yourself is, oh boy, I want to run up these hills in 80 and 90 degree weather and sweat my brains out. Is that something you say to yourself? It isn't. But so what did I do? Every morning I forced myself to put on my sneakers. I would jog over to where the hills were. And they were about, a quarter to half mile away. Not that far, but I would jog over there, loosen up. And then when I got to the hills, I would run up and down the hills a minimum of 10 times, trying to increase my stamina. Why? Because as a starter, I saw myself as a starter, and I said, this is the way people that are players act. They get themselves in shape. They are able to perform when the going gets tough. And the only way you can do that is by being in shape and by being ready to move. So people watching me going up and down hills will think to themselves, what is this guy doing? This guy's a nut. Well, it didn't turn out that way for me, because I actually was able to achieve my goal. And once you're doing that, you build momentum. Eventually, you will feel inspired. But it won't even matter by then, because you'll already be in the midst of action and fresh motivation. So act as if you already are what you want to be. Winners become winners by acting like it. Inspiration doesn't matter. Action does. Right action. Action that ignores enormous swelling fog of laziness and self-doubt. There were many times when, back in the day, I was asked to speak in front of a group of people. Sometimes a group of people were 20 people, sometimes it was 100 people, sometimes it was 500 people. And one of the things that I learned from a gentleman named Steve Lounsbury, I want to pay him his props, and I'm sure he's not the one that came up with the idea, but he's the one that taught me, is before you speak, you want to have your audience excited and ready to learn. Because what do most people do, even when they're paying for a seminar? They sit there, they get into their seats, they pull out their notepads, all right, and the first thing they do is they sit back and they say, okay, you're the genius, teach me. Give me your knowledge so that I will be as wise as you and I will be able to perform at a much higher level. That's the attitude that people have when they go to a seminar, when they go to a talk, when you're in class, they're in the classroom. What I used to do, once again based on Steve Lounsbury's teachings, was I would get everybody to move in action. We had a little thing called the Duke of York. And you do the Duke of York. He was the Duke of York. He had 10,000 men. He marched them up the hill, he marched them down again. And when you're up, you're up. And when you're down, you're down. And when you're halfway up, you're neither up nor down. And we would do that faster and faster, 5 or 6 times, 7 times, and everybody would have their body in motion, and then we'd say, all right, give yourselves a hand. Everybody was like, all right, and now when I'm ready to speak, people are listening, people are focused. Instead of sitting back, I got their body moving, so action gets the body moving. To be sure, initial action might not produce the results you want, but that's not the point. You want momentum. You create your own inspiration and motivation by acting regardless of how you feel. Inspiration is fleeting and unreliable. You can go months without it. To rely on it is not a winning strategy. Instead of waiting to feel like you're ready, act before you're ready. Ignore inspiration. Now, if it's there, great. Use it. If it's not, act anyway. This is how you create sustainable motivation in the first place. Most of the world waits for motivation to strike. They watch viral videos of people doing incredible things or sink so low that they become disgusted with their own behavior and change out of revulsion. Now, that can work sometimes, but you've experienced that yourself. What's the right equation? Action, inspiration, motivation. You are in charge of your life, your actions, behaviors, and your choices. You can act despite not feeling inspired. It doesn't matter how you feel, act anyway. Act as if. It will become acting as is. And remember, don't ever ration the passion, fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.